I'm done with all this chit chat.
Well, we don't even know what the other segments are. You can't be done with the chit chat.
I did told you.
You did one. You said we have a new one. But what about what are we doing before that?
Okay, listen to the show because I said we got Fringe and we got Question of the Week.
No, you didn't say that.
I literally said that.
No, you did not.
I said that 2 minutes ago.
No, you did not. Okay, he did. Dang it.
Welcome to the Fringe Youth Worker Podcast with TJ and Sonny.
Hello and welcome to the Fringe Youth Worker Podcast. My name is TJ McConaughey and I am joined, as always, by my best friend and co-host, Sonny Saltalamacchia. Sonny, how are you doing?
Doing fantastic, TJ. I am crushing the softballs because it is spring season and the Blazers are in a playoff series following Damian Lillard's incredible shot. And more importantly, finally getting the street cred across the country that he well deserves. Yeah. And we are back with another episode and a chance to humbly brag about how the Lord is using us in our effective. There you go.
Effective. And I'm not effective.
I used the wrong adjective. So then I just decided to get out.
I like that
get out while I could.
I liked that you incorporated the Blazers because currently the Blazers are playing game 3 of
44-41, minute 58 to go.
And we are doing this podcast. That's how devoted we are to you randos. Is both Sonny and I love our Blazers. And
I really hope Paul Craven appreciates this, DJ.
Yeah, I hope he does too. I really do hope he does too. So Sonny, we got some news. We got a new segment we're going to do today. And I'm super excited about that. It's called Pick or Tick. I'm not going to explain it right now, but I'm just going to put it out there. Now, I know that you want to call it something else.
There's some controversy around the name, TJ. I think it should be Pick or Flick, but we'll talk about that.
Yeah, maybe we'll let the randos decide on it. But either way, Pick or Tick or Pick or Flick. It's all awesome and possum stuff. We also got Tales from the Fringe and a Question of the Week coming to you guys.
Did you just
today.
Say awesome possum?
Awesome possum.
I used to have a phrase that said, "It's awesome like a possum in full blossom in autumn."
So stupid.
I know.
It was
That's
like
why
middle
I said
school?
used to have it.
All right. Well, I'm glad that you had that in your life, and I'm glad you've let that go because that makes it. And also, there's a video element to this. If you guys on Instagram, Sonny and I are kind of matching right now, which makes it kind of fun.
I'm wearing a green hat. You're wearing a black. But
your hat
custom made hat, bro. Check it out.
It looks black. BRS Studios.
That's right.
Bridgeway
custom made.
Bridgeway Studios.
Yep.
Wait, is it BRS and then Studios? What's the S for?
Bridgeway Recovery Services Studios, or AKA Bridgeway Response Studio Services, or I don't know. We haven't figured it out yet. That's why I only got one hat made, bro. We're still in the process.
It's a prototype.
But I got to pay homage to the mothership. So BRS is where I work for. So I got to pay homage to them.
Here's a hint, youth pastors. Don't just start putting letters on hats if you don't know what they mean.
But pay homage to the mothership. You can use the initials and then go from there.
Hey, Sonny, I'm done with all this chit chat.
Well, we don't even know what the other segments are. You can't be done with the chit chat.
I did told you.
You did one. You said we have a new one. But what about what are we doing before that?
Okay, listen to the show because I said we got Fringe and we got Question of the Week.
No, you didn't say that.
I literally said that.
No, you did not.
I said that 2 minutes ago.
No, you did not.
All right.
For those of you who want to know what we're doing, we are doing Question of the Week, followed by Tales from the Fringe, and then Pick or Flick. Now you can be done with the chit chat.
I'm done with the chit chat, so let's get to the show.
Join the conversation on Facebook and Instagram. And when you subscribe to this podcast, please leave us a 5-star rating. We desperately need your approval.
All right, question of the week. This is going to be a heartfelt question, Sonny. When did you first know that you wanted to be a full-time youth worker? When did you first know that you wanted to be a full-time youth worker?
Full-time or like wanted to do it?
That's what you want to do. So basically, maybe when you got the call to be a youth worker. Let's say it that way.
I already told the story. It was for those of you who haven't listened to the past episodes, I was in a band. I was in this screamo band, this hardcore screamo band, and we were playing shows and all that kind of stuff. And
what was the name of this band?
Selah PR. That is on the annals of YouTube. Just type in SELAH and then PR. We started it, TJ. It was just called Selah because it's in the Old Testament. And it means like pause and reflect. So we just called the band Selah, but then there was that like contemporary band called Selah. Then we added the PR onto it, which meant pause and reflect. So Selah PR. Anyway, if you're into screaming and all that, you can look it up. Pretty cool. So we would go around playing shows and all that kind of jazz. And we played this one show this one time. And it was a New Year's Eve show at this really cool church where they had a huge youth room and stuff like that. And I met this young lady afterwards. She was 13. Just started talking to her. She came up to our merch table. And she showed me scars on her arm. And we had a great conversation. And then I promised her I'd bring her a Bible the next week. Didn't do it. And then 5 weeks later, I remember and bring her the Bible. It turned out to be on her birthday. And just her reaction was super cool. And so I was like, man, this is kind of awesome. I think I want to do this to do this, you know? And then I was hanging out with this guy. I won't say his name, but this pastor of the church at the time invited that guy, or he wanted to have a conversation with that guy to volunteer in the youth group because that guy had a bunch of tattoos and he was good looking. And I'll let you know who it was. And so of course she's like, oh yeah, we should get that guy to volunteer in the youth group. Yeah. So then I tagged along, bro. I just tagged along. This is like, this is probably what, 4? So this is like 15 years ago. So I just tagged along and I was like, man, that sounds awesome. And I went and the tattoo guy didn't, and I've never left since. So there you go.
Couple things there. First of all, it's awesome that it's the can't pick 'em premise there. The people you think are going to be the studs in youth ministry are usually bombs, and the people who you think aren't going to do well end up being studs in youth ministry. And I just love that. I love the idea that it's like, you were doing something else that was kind of youth related in this band.
Very youth related, but it didn't we weren't doing it for you. We were doing it for our own glory,
Yeah.
And
you got the bug for being a youth worker then. And for you though, Sonny, you I think you kind of started with the idea of being in the church doing it, right? And then
for years I wanted to do a youth pastor, but then I was pushing 30, and then it just I was getting a little old for it. And then it just never really felt, I tried to do it for a lot of years over there, but the situation, it was kind of weird and just didn't work. And then you came over, and then there was no reason to try to do that. And so then went a different route, changed it up, and went into the drug and alcohol field. And yeah, man, now that's just been a whole other big blessing and stuff like that. So I think the biggest thing was just being open to working with youth in whatever capacity the Lord opened the door, I think that was the biggest lesson I've.
Yeah. Because your original vision was, hey, I want to be a youth minister. I want to be working in the church, doing this stuff, and then the door never really opened, or it did open and then it shut, and then it pivoted into something that's really incredible and really awesome. So, that's awesome. When I first got the call to go into youth ministry, I was 16 years old, and I was on this mission trip, and we were sharing the gospel, and we were running this program. We were in the middle of this place called Cambridge, Idaho, and we were running VBS camps and doing all this stuff. And I remember right in the middle of that, I just had this overwhelming peace about what I was doing. I'd never experienced fitting so well in something. And I went and talked to my youth pastor about it, and he kind of affirmed that maybe I was getting the call to be a youth pastor. And so I was like, hey, well, why don't you teach me how to be a youth pastor? And he said, if you can do anything else, do anything else, because this is not an easy road. And I remember thinking back then, you're crazy, dude. You get to hang out all the time. You get to play games all the time. You get to it looks so much fun. And I didn't realize back then, but I do now, 12 years into it, that as many awesome parts of youth ministry, there's also a lot of matching heartbreaks. And so, I didn't know what that meant back then, but I do know what it means now. And that's when I got the call to be in youth work, and I haven't let go. And part of that, Sonny, was we just had such a great culture in the youth group back then. It was like on fire. Everybody was like on fire. And people were getting saved just because they came to our youth ministry. It was so different than every other place that they'd been to. It's just people were loving each other and they were kind to each other and we were open about Jesus. And it was just that sense of revival was just so real. And that community is something I've been chasing ever since, for sure.
What was it at 16? I mean, what drew you to youth group in the first place?
Well, I was on a way different path. I was on a way different path. I was in San Jose, California. I was bitter. I was angry. I was getting arrested at some point and had a pretty violent record at that point. And my sister got saved, and she got really annoying about Jesus. And I remember I was like, that might be cool for you, but it's not cool for me. But she kept talking about it. I remember I screamed at her one time, like, don't ever tell me about Jesus again. I don't want to hear about it.
Oh, wow.
You know, I was so mad. And then so she didn't talk to me about it again, but she came in one day and she's like, hey, you like wakeboarding, don't you? And I was like, yeah, I love wakeboarding. And she's like, you want to go to this wakeboarding camp with me? And I'm like, yeah, that sounds awesome. She showed me all these pictures of her and her friends like wakeboarding. And I'm like, this is great. Yeah, I would love to go on this. And that was a church camp, and she just sort of tricked me into going to it. And I didn't realize that it was that until we were 11 hours away from home and at camp. And so at that camp, I was bitter. I was angry. I thought I could leave by getting kicked out if I could just start a fight with somebody. And then everyone, like I told you about that culture, was just super nice to me. And I couldn't shake them. And I realized they had something I didn't have. And I was like, man, I want this Jesus thing. And that's where I found Jesus. And it was 6 months later that I got the call to ministry on the mission trip. So yeah, happened to me pretty fast.
How often do you just kind of sit back and reflect on all that?
How often do I sit back and reflect on that? I talk about it all the time because in youth ministry, you talk a lot about your testimony. And so I do think about that. I just think about just how radically different my life path took because of Jesus. Like it's such a stark contrast for me. Like I think this is one of the hard things for me. Like I think one of the biggest struggles I have in youth ministry is relating to like those high-end church kids. And I'm better at this because my wife's a high-end church kid. But you know, for me, I just know the difference between what the world's got to offer and what my life was like when I found God. And so I was like, this is so much better. And it's always been that way. Even with some of the hiccups I've faced in ministry, I've always known that, you know, the community that I found in Jesus and the church community and my best friends are people who love God. And that's been that way since I was 16 years old. So yeah, I do reflect on that quite often.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So that was it. Question of the week. Hey, youth workers, if you guys hear this right here, why don't you go over to our Facebook page and tell us what was the first time you realized that you were going to be a youth worker? What was your story on there? Type it up in just a little blurb and let us know why you started working with youth in whatever capacity that you're working with youth.
All right, Ted Francis McConaughey Jr. the third, second, whatever you are. Tales from the Fringe. And I didn't even think of one to say.
So why don't you pretend to listen?
You're going to go first while I scroll through my phone and look at all my things here, or I'm going to pull one off the top of my hat.
All right. So you're going to like this one, Sonny, because it involves someone you know. Big Chris. And we've talked about him on the show. I'm sure we've talked about him before on the show, right?
I think we once made reference to some things he did in a van.
Okay.
He had to sleep in it for a while.
He didn't do anything in the van. He just slept in the van. But
that's doing something because because he's mammoth.
He is a big Hawaiian, like big Hawaiian dude. His hands are huge too, man. He's just a massive human. But he's a total teddy bear personality, man.
Yeah.
He looks intimidating, but he's not intimidating at all. And I remember he was on our youth staff when we were down in Oregon doing it together, and we went to this camp. And I think this is the camp. Yeah, you were at this camp. This was the mosquito. Were you at mosquito camp?
Oh yeah.
Okay. And so mosquito, it wasn't called mosquito. We just had a ton of mosquitoes that year.
We almost had to cancel it. We had a ton of that.
Yeah, we almost went home early because it was that bad. That's a different story for a different day. So Chris was there, and I remember I kind of got some flack from an elder before I left for that camp that, why do you have this guy on your youth staff? He's kind of fringe. I remember him saying fringe back then. He doesn't know a whole lot about the Bible, and what's he got to offer here? And and I remember thinking back then, like, what his contribution is more than his knowledge. He's a awesome personality, and he does love God. And at that camp, it came into full focus, like why he was a youth worker or someone who was a volunteer youth worker. So we had this kid named, can I say his name on the show? I'll say it, Cohen. And we had this kid named Cohen, and he came to camp, and I don't know if he was tricked into going to camp. He might have had a similar story to me. He forced into coming to camp. His parents made him, but he let us know right off the bat. You remember this, Sonny, that he was an atheist. Like that was his big thing. It was like, I'm an atheist. I don't believe in this stuff. And so every time we did our chapels, he would take a beeline to his tent, and he would just sit in his tent alone while the chapel was going on. And it's kind of an awkward thing because he had to hear it because it wasn't that far from where we were at, but it was his protest. I'm an atheist. I'm not going to be in a chapel thing. So I'll do the boating. I
will show you how much I don't appreciate.
Yeah, and I remember, I don't want to force people. I think that's always been my philosophy is if you don't want to do something, I'm not going to make you do it. Other youth pastors have different philosophies, but I was like that. But Chris saw him do this. And so what Chris would do is he'd take and he had this huge camp chair. Remember that thing? He must have special ordered it because
he needed a huge camp chair.
I mean, yeah, it was like, man.
I think you should specify. Chris is what was he Samoan?
Yeah, he has a big Hawaiian Samoan. Yeah,
like what? Barely like 5'10", maybe 6 foot.
Yeah. But he looks like the guys who move furniture. That's what. Yeah. But he doesn't do that for a living. But that's what he looks like. He's just built big, and Chris would go over and take his big chair and just sit by that tent and talk to Cohen through the wall of the tent, right? Throughout the whole chapel, right? And it wasn't like he was talking to him about Jesus. He wasn't over there sharing the 4 spiritual laws. He wasn't, trying to make him guilt him into going to chapel.
Hey, let's read Romans Road, bro.
Yeah. He was literally just saying it's camp and people shouldn't be allowed to camp. So I'm going to go be with him. And so he just, that was what was going on in Big Chris's head. And he just sat there, and pretty soon there was 2 chairs, and Cohen was outside of his tent, and he was sitting with Chris. They were just talking, and then pretty soon they were standing at the back of the chapel, standing together, talking, kind of listening, and then pretty soon they were sitting in chapel together. And I just remember, Chris may not know a whole lot of the Bible, and he may not be the person who's gonna floor anybody with his, eloquent speech. But he knew enough in this moment to see someone who was isolating themselves. And he went and made it his task to make it just so that Cohen wasn't alone at camp. And and I love that because it was so natural, Sonny. It was so natural. Like so many of us would be like, well, let's it's the opposite of the conversation. I think it was 2 weeks ago you shared that thing where you're like, there's a kid and somebody stole something, or somebody vandalized something, and we're going to go relationally make them feel guilty about it.
Yeah.
This is the opposite of this. This is just Chris in his mind, and the very simple thought of it's camp. People shouldn't be alone. And it wasn't at camp, but when we got back from camp, Cohen became a Christian and dove deep into our group and became one of like the core kids, in that group of youth ministry. So, and I track that all right back to Chris Cox. And so, and I remember as I told that story when I got back, and I watched that elder's face who told me that, Chris wasn't going to be a champion. And I remember thinking, like, he's a champion for our ministry. Yeah.
No, and that story is good because it's pure.
Yeah.
And I remember when I first started going to the youth group that my buddy was supposed to go to. One of the first things I observed was one of the quote unquote, churchy youth leader guys who was like going to Bible school and supposed to be, the next up and coming. And he was trying to relate to this kid. They're playing football and he's like, "So what do you do like after school?" And the kid's like I'm playing football here, like leave me alone, basically saying that, but trying to be nice, And then the guy's like, "So like you want to get together and like read a book and talk about it?" And we were just going, okay, this guy's freaking lame, man. Like what the heck is this going on in this church? And then I started doing this thing called Dork Fest, where I just started inviting kids over to play video games, and that kid was one of the main ones that would come over, and we'd have these amazing conversations over video games or whatever, or going to Taco Bell late at night. And I think that's what Chris was doing. It's the fakeness that kids can see through, and the realness that they crave, And I think especially in this generation, because so many broken homes, so many adults have left them. Transparency is not really seen very much because everything on social media is kind of fake. Everybody's taking pictures of their food, or you take 10 minutes to post a picture because you want it to be the best angle. And so I think there's a lot of skepticism with kids in general, especially towards adults. And when an adult presents himself as just honest and like, "Hey, how are you doing?" Like that's what drew me in the youth group, was a guy just going, "How are you?" Like, but sincerely going, "How are you?" Like it wasn't like a passing "How you doing?" It wasn't like in the 5 minutes of, in between the worship set and where you're going to sit down and listen to the message. It was a sincere, "I want to get to know you." That's what kids respond to, man,
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's, and isn't that in the word where it talks about, using the foolish to shame the wise? And I remember there's that one part in there where it talks about how the one guy didn't know anything, but he knew one thing, and that was enough,
Yep.
And I think that's what Chris knew, is that people shouldn't be alone.
Yep. And again, Chris, like again, where his gift was in that pure love. It was just, it was a moment of love, and that was what was so special about it, and it was so awesome, and it was so genuine, and it was so authentic, to use a bunch of millennial words. But I think about that often, and so that's a fringe kid and a fringe youth worker, figuring out how to do fringe youth work. So I thought that would be a good one, and all the characters involved, so I thought that'd be a good show story right there.
All right, so I've been working with this family. I won't say their names on the show, but I've worked with this family for a number of years, and there's a son involved, and then his cousin, or his like niece, so to say, really. But they're both like in their teens, and so the one guy of the story is like a year older than the girl, and really rough home. Mom's drug dealing, dad's nowhere around. The girl suffered some sexual abuse by a brother, and she had to put him in jail, and just kind of really, really rough stuff. And then she gets blamed for it by the family, and kind of gets kicked around to live at this grandma's house or this grandma's house and stuff like that. Anyway, so a couple years ago, the guy, her cousin or her uncle, was coming into treatment, and he would try to play the game and try to be the gangster and whatever. But then there was other times where, like, remember this one time in particular, he came over and he was crying, he was pissed off, and said his uncle just kind of beat him up and just punked him out in front of his whole entire family, and he was just like, well, why would he do that? And what the heck? And just all kind of confused. And there was this house that we could have moved him into, if he wanted to go, it was it was people he knew. There was this program called the Ike Quest he was involved in. And it would have been a really safe place for him. And I remember he was on the run, and I drove him down one day to go talk to these people, and him and his buddy, and they were sitting there, and we were on the corner of this street in Salem, and we were sitting there talking, and he was like, he's all loaded, and we were having this conversation of like, right now you're about to make a choice that's going to set your life either in the right direction or the wrong direction. And we sat there for probably 20 minutes, trying to help him make the choice, and he ended up just kind of going on the run and leaving. And then I really haven't seen him much since. But then I started working with his niece, and been working with her for the last 2 years, and just kind of a rough go. She's pregnant right now, which doesn't help matters. Of course, she's pregnant, and then she's in this program called GAP, where she's getting ready to go home, and the one set of grandparents are the more stable ones, like they don't sell drugs, but it was their son that she got put into jail because he was abusing her, and so they blame her for that, and they go visit him all the time. They make her wait in the car while they go visit the guy and stuff. It's a horrible situation. And then they're just really rude to her. Whoa. And so over the last few days, they were saying, like, don't you have anywhere else to go? Because she's supposed to get out of this one program and go back home. And they're saying, don't you have anywhere else to go? Can't you find somebody else to live with you? And I never seen her cry, and she always had this really great attitude about everything and stuff. And I know a lot of it was a mask, but she's really tough. So then a couple days ago, I go meet with her the day before she's supposed to leave, and she ends up just bawling, just breaking down, and just saying things like, "Why don't they want me?" or why would somebody say you're such a pain in the butt, or why do they never love on me when I'm the one who got abused? Why do they never pay attention to me, or why do they never support me? And just losing her stuff, And I just sat there and didn't really know what to do, but just sat there and let her just vent. And so then throughout this whole process, she was still wanting to go home.
Yeah.
But this was at the point now where she realized she probably couldn't go home. So again, we had the option to move into the exact same house that her uncle had a chance to go into, the kid I worked with, years before. And then she was kind of on the fence of moving in there. And then yesterday she moved in there.
Wow.
And it was just really kind of cool thing that, about 3 years ago, her uncle, similar, they're like similar age, he had the chance to go and he didn't, and he's on the run and his life isn't really good. And then years later, she had the same opportunity and she took it. And dude, it's pretty freaking cool. And
that's awesome.
Super proud of her for making that choice and kind of removing herself from the subjective feelings of wanting to be home and all that kind of stuff, and really kind of taking ownership of her life. And it was crazy, man. And so it was weird too, because I'm just having the same conversation with a different member of the family years later, and it was a trip. But
and that's it, really.
Cool.
I mean, isn't that what you're trying to do, Sonny? Is you're trying to change family trees? You're trying to change family trajectories in what you're doing, and gosh, I mean, you gotta. Sometimes it must feel like hitting your head against the wall.
About every day.
Yeah,
every freaking day. And that was we talked about that as well. We always refer to it as breaking the chain.
Yeah,
and I had to break the chain in my family. You've kind of had to break it in your family, and it's kind of like this is why you're youth pastor and I'm not. Who was David's son? Why? Because David couldn't be blessed, right? Or so Solomon had to be blessed or something like that.
Solomon was David's son, yes.
Yeah, but David couldn't be blessed because of what he did, and so Solomon with the blessings, wasn't that like part of it?
So if what you're talking about is that David wanted to build the temple, and he couldn't build the temple because there was too much blood on his hand. Because he shed too much blood.
And so I kind of look at like sometimes, when you're the Chainbreaker, you're kind of the David, so to say, and you're the one who has to get dirty and not really have the fun life that maybe wasn't you wanted to because you're busy breaking the chain. But by you doing that, you're blessing your future generations and your kids and their kids and their kids and their kids and stuff like that. And that ties in that other verse about, what does it say? A blessed whatever blesses the generations to the thousands or something like that.
Yeah, sure. That's
isn't it somewhere in there?
The blessed blesses the
no, remember generation. Like a crooked man, the sins of the father go to the all that stuff.
Oh yeah. That's,
See, I know what I'm talking about. I don't need no hermeneutics.
Well, that's
I got you.
Well, that's actually a really important verse. Is it's actually God kind of identifying himself to Moses. He says, "I am filled with mercy, and I lavish unfailing love on generation, but I do not let the guilty go unpunished. I put the sins of the fathers on the generation after generation."
Yeah.
So you're right.
And so basically it's just, when you're the Chainbreaker, life isn't easy. And you need a lot of support around you and stuff. And so, here she is, she's young, she's pregnant, baby daddy who knows if he's going to be around or not. Her grandparents are basically saying, go find your own place. Her mom's a drug addict. She never even met her father. It's just a classic. She checks all the boxes for that fringe kid, you know?
Yeah.
And then the organization she's tied up in is they're believers, and it's just cool, man, that she's
good.
brought in.
And the cool thing is, Sonny, is that you've already seen this thing play out. And so in your head, you've got to go to the skeptical place first, right? I've already worked with your family. I know how this is going to go. And so when she makes the decision to do the thing that her other family, is it her cousin or her brother or uncle?
It's like they're the same age, but it's her uncle. It's one of those weird things. Yeah.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about. So in your head, you got to go to that skeptical place. And so I think it's cool when even veterans are surprised by something. I think that's probably a fun little surprise for you. So that's cool.
It was cool, man. So
Chainbreakers, man. I love that. I think that's a great name for this episode, by the way. Chainbreakers. So that'd be good. And hey, you know what, guys? And let's just talk the randos here. That's what we're trying to do. Fringe Youth Ministry is about breaking chains. It's about changing family trajectories, and it's supporting students who are doing the hard task of taking nothing that they've been given from their family, and trying to apply new things to their lives. And so me and you are that, and giving grace to those students and allowing those students to grow into something beautiful and awesome. And truthfully, that's where I see the most vibrant faith, is that first generation Chainbreaker. They don't know a whole lot. When they quote scripture, it sometimes sounds like Sonny quoting scripture, but
I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, but he knows what he's talking about, and the faith is real, and that's great story. I love that. All right, Sonny, it is time for... I'm excited about this. When I came up with this idea, I was literally sitting there thinking, oh, this is going to be awesome, and I can't wait to debut it on the show. I think it plays to Sonny's strengths. I think it plays to my strengths. I think it'll help our pacing. There was just so much I was excited about, and then we get to the naming of it. And you put the brakes on it, and so
I didn't put the brakes.
I'm just going to throw
out different options.
I'm going to explain what this thing is, and then we can talk about the name. All right. So what's going to happen is I'm going to give you a topic, and you've got to tell me if you are picking it, like you like it. I'm going to take that, or you're
I like the take on it, or what do you mean? Like when you say topic, like what do you mean? Like pro football.
Exactly.
But what am I doing with that? How am I picking that?
So it's like so either you're picking it like to be on your team, like I'm about this, or it's ticking you off, right? So it's something in culture that you're gonna. You
love Tick of the Week. This is just your way to get Tick of the Week back.
I love Tick of the Week. You want to know why I love Tick of the Week?
Because you love Ben Shapiro.
No, that's not true. But I do love Ben Shapiro. But at the same time,
he's like a protagonist. He's an antagonist.
Anyway, can I get to the point over here? Okay. Gosh, man, you just set me off. I was so excited.
You're so easy to like gaslight, bro.
Gaslighting me.
You just got gaslighted.
Anyway, you got to.
We should have that as like a sound effect. Like you just got gaslighted. Burn, baby.
Are you picking
in Ron Burgundy's voice? Come on, that'd be funny. Sorry,
go ahead. It would be funny. Okay. Are you picking it, or are you flicking it, or are you ticking on it? Like, so basically, and also, Sonny, I think that one of my favorite versions of Sonny is Angry Sonny. Angry Sonny is relevant and awesome, and it's actually my favorite thing is when you go off on youth pastors. It is one of my favorite things. It's a good thing.
Aren't you a youth pastor?
Thing. I like it though. I like when you critique youth ministry and youth work, and coming from your angle. I think that's a good thing. I think youth pastors need to hear some of that stuff. Anyway, so Sonny, I'm going to give you a topic.
I'm looking for Ron Burgundy quotes right now.
Okay. I'm going to give you a quote here. I'm going to give you a topic, and you got to tell me if you pick.
The first topic should be the name of the show.
All right. Should we call this show, or this segment, should we call this segment Pick or Flick, or should we call this pick or tick? Go.
I think pick or flick. Because the booger reference. Because why are you going to go against the booger reference?
Well, the booger is you're picking and flicking.
You pick it and flick it. Pick it, yes, you pick it, but flick it means get off me. I don't want nothing to do with that. That's why I think it should be pick or flick.
Okay. I like pick or tick because it references tick of the week, which I used to love, and I like the anger that's built into it.
It could also be called pick or lick, but I can't figure out a way to justify lick. So
okay, all right. So we'll let the randos decide this week. There'll be a poll question. We want to call the new segment "Pick or Flick" or "Pick or Tick." We're gonna throw it out there. All right, Sonny. 4 topics ready, and I'm also gonna chime in.
So what do I say? I just say pick, and then I say what I'm gonna. A couple things about it, or no?
Hot take. It's got to be quick. Basically, you got about a minute on each one to kind of like say something.
Now, why do you get the prep? Why do you get to look at all these ahead of time?
Because you're the one who prides yourself on being good on the fly.
I don't pride myself on it.
And next week you're going to bring 2, and I'm going to bring 2. So we're going to both be able to
bring 3.
Okay, you're in a crappy mood right now, which I love.
I hit a softball 300 feet and got a single, bro. I'm kind of pissed.
Okay, 300 feet. Okay, 300 feet.
It was 250.
Okay. It would be a girl home run.
Okay, they put a stupid girl's fence in front of the guy's fence, and if you hit it over the girl's fence, it's a single. I had bases loaded, dude. Come on, who does that?
You can tell that in a
That'll be mine next
week. All right. So you ready for this?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Pick or tick. Avenger films.
Flick. Don't care. Irrelevant. I already ruined it for you. I can gladly troll anybody about the Avenger films. It's like, come on. It's like there's no creativity anymore. We're making movies off of everything in the 80s and 90s. Transformers, Avengers, Captain America. I'm over it, dude. Like, where's the originality of movie making anymore? I'm done.
And so when youth workers use Avengers, Marvel movies, and all that stuff, is that a flick for you?
100%. Because it's disingenuous. Like, did you see the one the video of the guy who ruins so and so dying in the movie in his youth speech? I think it was shared on Youth Pastors Only or something like that. So he's making the reference and he drops that, and then all the kids are like, "Whoa, I can't believe he did that!" Blah 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 and stuff. You know.
So be careful here, Sonny. We don't want to spoil anything. We don't want to spoil
anything. Okay. I'm not going to talk about how Thanos dies and all that kind of stuff, bro.
Okay. All right. I'm also a tick here or flick, whatever. We're going to decide this thing next week. I feel like these movies are the same movie over and over and over again.
Over and over.
And I'm just not that into it in that way. I enjoy it. Like, it's like for me eating, what's like a chain that a lot of people eat at, like Burger King. It's like, yeah, okay. Like if there's nothing else, I'll have Burger King, and that's what Avenger films are for me. And so the whole culture around it of like, it's happening, it's awesome, it's crazy, can you believe it, oh no, there's a new one, oh my goodness, all that around it for me is like, what, why is this such a big deal, and truthfully, my favorite superhero movies are I like the Dark Knight Rises or the Dark Knight.
Those are good.
And I thought those were really good. I never thought Christian Bale was a great Batman, but those movies were just so good. And besides that, like I haven't gotten into. There was one Marvel movie that I got into was, and it was the Marvel movie that was unlike any other Marvel movie because it was actually interesting and it had a different soundtrack and a different like thing. And it was the last Wolverine movie. What was that one called? Logan. Logan was a superhero movie that didn't feel like a superhero movie, and I loved it because of that. So for me, it's a flick too. I guess we just named it Tick or Flick.
Flick squared.
Okay. All right. You ready for the next one?
Yep.
Preachers and sneakers. Tick or Flick?
Don't care.
So are you tick or flicking it?
What's the whole thing?
You
Is
don't
it
know,
like
you
the
don't
whole
know what this
movement
is?
of the guy who calls out the preachers for wearing expensive shoes? Is that it? Or is it like preachers wearing sneakers? Like they're not supposed to do that.
So basically, yeah. It's the whole idea. What you just said there.
Well, which one is it though? Is it just a preacher wearing sneakers, or is it a preacher wearing Yeezys?
It's a preacher wearing really expensive shoes. That's what the whole blog's about.
Well, but then you're going to open up a whole can of worms. I think a church should be simply a roof and standing folding chairs. And then all the money donated is not to people's comfortability, but it's to actual people in need. So therefore, 100% flick. 100% flick.
And this is why this segment is so good.
How many churches, TJ, sit empty at night and there's homeless people on the streets? And why don't they allow them to stay there? Why this will never, I will never understand this. You could solve the homeless problem in every city across the country in 2 seconds. But it's because it'll stink, or they'll thrash the church, or we do a coat drive once a year in wintertime. We feel better about ourselves. Like, come on, dude.
So that's
like
why
100%.
First of all, this is a hot take right here. This is a steaming.
I'm just saying. What does your church do? Does it sit empty at night while there's homeless people around?
Of take right here. Preachers and sneakers, Sonny.
Same line. If a preacher has Yeezys, I'm wondering why I'm giving money to this church. If a preacher's wearing more expensive shoes than I got on, I'm wondering why I'm giving money to this church.
So when you give money to the church, though, are you giving money to the pastor? Is that what you're?
Of course you are. He gets money, gets a paycheck.
So that's what you're thinking, though. Like whenever you give money to a church, you're saying this going to the pastor. That's why you're giving money to the church.
Where does their money come from?
Well, that is true, but that's your main reason for giving the church, is what I'm saying.
No, that's not the main reason, but I know that's where some of my money's going. Now, it's his choice. He can do whatever he wants. But then you got, like, Joyce Meyer having her own private plane. Like, come on, dude. Like, what would Jesus think? If Jesus were here right now, what would he think? Dude didn't even wear shoes. Come on.
All right. I'm gonna jump in here before Sonny goes off the deep end here. Come on, Pastor.
What kind of shoes you got?
I'm a pick on this one, which is strange to see, but and here's the thing is I don't really care because I don't wear expensive anything, but the guys who are wearing the expensive stuff, they're usually not getting that money from the church. They're usually because they wrote some book and
you can verify that they're buying their expensive shoes.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know
exactly.
I don't know what it is, but at the same time, like I just, again, before I look at somebody else and say, hey, you're not doing this right because you're not spending your money on this or that. I don't know. I just feel like there's a lot of layers there before I can get to that place. But I'm with you that I think that resources, especially church resources, need to be spent well, and that's one of the things that in my ministry I do. But I don't really like. For me, it says nothing to me what shoes the pastor is wearing. Or if they're wearing a 3-point suit, or if they're wearing Gucci, or if they're wearing a bro tank and things. For me, it's like, are you preaching the word? And
correct. That's what matters more than anything.
And if you're preaching the word and you want to spend your money on sneakers, well, I think that's a stupid thing to do, spend that much money on sneakers. But I have things that I spend way too much money on. I spend way too much money on camera gear, and they're a lot more than speakers.
Okay, let me ask you a question.
Sneakers.
What about the verse that talks about if what you're doing causes your brother to stumble, then you should knock it off? Doesn't it say something like that?
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, that's the weaker brother argument. So
if you're the pastor of a flock, and you're up there rocking Yeezys.
Well, I mean, I think that in that context, though, Sonny, I mean, again, this context is everything. The people that they're speaking to, it might not be a stumbling block. In fact, it might be an inroad to speak to the people that they're trying to speak to. I mean,
hey, babe, I need to buy these $300 shoes to witness to these kids. They're not going to respect me. Then we're watering down. Then we're saying the gospel isn't enough. I mean, come on.
Well, I mean,
that argument.
No, that's not a weak argument. Yeah. So, I mean, in that way, it's like, I mean, here's the other thing, like, high-end Baptist churches that we are very familiar with, and those preachers spend some money on suits. They spend some straight money on suits, and that's not a stumbling block for anybody in that congregation. And so for me, it's, again, it really depends on the context. It really depends on the context. And for me, I don't have a hot take that's like, you should never ever spend money on these things or that things.
I'm not saying that.
again, you know this, Sonny. You have things you spend extra money on. I have things I've spent extra money on, and someone could look at me and say, "Aren't you a man?"
I have things I spend money on that my wife allows me with my allowance that I give her all my money. It's kind of a messed up.
All right, next thing. These got to be good. Hey, this is already my favorite segment ever. Okay,
I feel like you're just asking me questions to get me all pissed off.
That's exactly what I love about it.
I don't like this segment.
Salty. His name is Salty Lamakia, and he's so good at being salty. It's so great. Humble brags.
Oh, these are all topics I hate. What are you doing? Give me a break.
Tell me, Sonny, what
humble brag? Humble brag. Okay, here's the deal with the humble brag. Everybody loves to talk about themselves. We know that, right?
Yeah.
And social media, before social media was around, you had to prove yourself, right? Like you were like, hey, look how high I can jump in my BMX, or I'm going to do this or whatever, right? Like you had to go out and prove it. Now with social media, it's like, how many times, and I'm going to piss off a lot of people. I'm probably going to call I'm calling you to the carpet too on this.
I know. It's
the whole, I am so blessed to be at this place right now, ministering to these kids. Look how awesome I am, but I am so blessed to be here. And maybe that's how I perceive it, because my motivation's always off. I don't know. But I've talked about the humble brag with a lot of people, and I can't stand the humble brag. Look how blessed I am to speak to this homeless person on the street today.
Yeah.
Look how blessed I am that I've got to witness this girl in her 7-year journey of coming to the Lord, and I got to walk by her through all these. It's just like, dude, what part of the gospel is that ever talked about? Like, he says, doesn't he say, do what you do in the secret, right? Doesn't he say that? He goes, don't do it for the praise of men, because then you're rewarding full. Like, keep that stuff to yourself.
Mostly
social media
mostly
gave
that's
us a
talking
platform
about prayer there. Just to back up there, that's talking about prayer. When you pray.
No, there's lots of stuff in there about it. I sent it to you. It's like Matthew 6:1, isn't it?
When you pray in public, don't be that person. Hey, but here's the thing: is let's back up here. Humble brag. I think I'm also in the flick category here, even though I utilize the humble brag quite a bit.
Humble brag king.
But here's the thing: is I think one of the things that people don't realize about.
No, hold on. There's more than prayer. It's this. Be careful not. Come on, Pastor. I'm calling you out here too. Be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others.
Okay, there you go. There you go.
If you do, you'll have no reward from your Father in heaven. Verse 2. Yeah. So when you give to the needy, do not announce it with trumpets or Twitter or Instagram, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and the streets to be honored by others. But when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your Instagram is doing, so that you're maybe giving maybe in secret. Put that stuff in the DMs. Don't put it on the public stuff. Come on.
So yeah, in that context there, though, you're talking about charity. Make sure that your charity, when you're giving to people, it's not so that you can also give to yourself in that way, and you don't need to be celebrated for giving that stuff. I'm in a similar boat. I don't appreciate it, but I do know why we have to use it. And as a youth pastor, there's a lot of people who don't know what you do, and so you have to come up with creative ways.
Why is that? Why is that?
You have to create, you have to, hold on, this is just take segment. You have to come up with creative ways to sort of put out there what you're doing, why you're doing it. Well, there's a lot of reasons, and a lot of them, some of them aren't very pure. Some of them are, hey, I want to show the parents what's going on at youth group and youth ministry, and I want them to be excited about it. So when their kid comes home, they can kind of know, hey, this is what's going on in youth. Some of it is, there are people in the church who are like, why do we even need a youth ministry? Why do we even, why can't the kids just sit in the Bible studies like the rest of us? And so, to kind of put yourself out there more, of what your distinction is in youth ministry sometimes takes posts on Facebook, and sometimes takes humble brags. And there's a lot of people who donate, especially to when you do these mission trips. There's a lot of people who donate especially for them, and so you need to figure out creative ways to say thank you. And oftentimes the humble brag is utilized in that situation.
Okay.
Hey, hot takes over.
No, I'm blowing holes in that. Okay, so somebody donates to the thing. Send them a letter. Hey, thank you so much. Here's a story that happened. Like, do it in private. Like, it's the whole. It's the whole, I am so blessed to be speaking at this school today. I am so blessed to be a witness in these kids' lives. It's like that stuff, that just annoys the heck out of me, man. And like, I was guilty of it for years. I had to stop doing it. And like, oh man, it just drives me crazy.
Yeah.
Because then it's like, what are you really doing? Like, what? I think it's so dangerous because I've always hated organizations who use kids as trophies. To me, that's the worst.
Yeah.
When your trophy of your good works is a kid, you hoist this kid up as nothing more than a trophy, then you immediately take away that relationship and the whole Chris Cox-Cohen thing. Chris Cox wasn't going over there for no other reason but to get to know the kid. And if you're doing your thing for any other reason but for that relationship, then I question your motives, man. And they're faulty, and that could lead to bad things. You know, we hear bad things all the time about people who work with kids, you know? So anyway.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with a lot of what you just said. All right, you ready for the next one?
Yeah, I gotta take a break.
You all right?
I don't know. What are you gonna say next? The Raiders suck? Anchorman's not the best movie of all time? What are you gonna do next?
You're gonna like this next one.
What are you gonna do next?
Taylor Swift, #1 setting records for her new video that she just put out called Me.
Yeah, what about
you picking or flicking that?
You really lowballed me here, didn't you, T? Really lowballed me. Really lowballed me here. All right, so I've listened to this new podcast called Hooked on Pop, and it's kind of cool. They dissect songs, and they dissect them and try to figure out why they're good or what makes a good song and stuff like that. So they recently did Taylor Swift because it took over. And if you watch what she did a month prior to the release of this song, she started posting hidden messages on her Instagram feed and Twitter and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then it led up to it, and then finally, and then she had like a big countdown on YouTube, and then she played the song. And the opening scene of the video is a snake that was her reputation theme because she was angry, and the snake shatters, and it shows this imagery of the snake turn into a butterfly, right? And so then that imagery is like out of the cocoon, no more angry. It's freaking puppies and rainbows now for the rest of my life, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the imagery was there, but then they talked about the song structure, and there's a part of her chorus I couldn't think off the top of my head right now, but it's like a ooh 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 wee 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 or something like that, whatever they do. But she did that in another song in a country album she had years ago, and it follows this trendy line in musical notation that's geared to like make you happy or make you like uppity and stuff like that. And both guys had a similar reaction that I did when I first heard the song. The first two choruses, you're like, okay, whatever. But by the time the third chorus hits, you're like, okay, this is getting stuck in my head. And the way they call it like musical sorcery, because the way you use your chorus and your melodies, and you can use certain notes, like minors are meant to be like sadness, and then major chords are meant to be happy. And the way she structured her chord structure, she has this thing called the Taylor line, which she always does, where she brings it up or brings it down to it. She just like basically implants it in your freaking head, and it just causes you to hum it, dude. And like, she's the master of songwriting. She's the master of catchy, cheesy pop songs that you don't want to like, that you find yourself 5 hours later humming, and you're like, how the hell did that get in my head? And so from somebody, you know, we study music all the time down here, and like, dude, she's king. She's king.
So you're picking it.
Have to. You can't. You have to. She's the king. You can't argue against it. She dominates the pop culture right now, bro.
Sonny has a very soft spot for Taylor Swift in his heart. If you didn't just hear that,
she's the king, man. I'm telling you, bro.
She's the king. You know,
she's the Madonna of our generation. Is she not?
Well, I would say, my take would be very similar. I think that the Beatles took over. They kind of invented the pop genre in my opinion. And the reason they did that is because they had this gift for building these songs that just stayed with you and
stuck in your head.
They just stayed with you forever. And a lot of people now don't know the Beatles, or especially younger, the kids I work with don't know the Beatles, but that really paved the way for they turned on pop music for the rest of the world, right? So that structure that they were using back in the day, that's all them. Taylor Swift is that now. She literally puts out these songs that the first time you hear like, oh, I don't know. And then all of a sudden it's still there. Why is it still in my head? And the crazy thing about Taylor Swift is she doesn't look like she should be that talented. She looks like somebody because she's
wow,
she looks
bro,
like
judge much.
Well, I mean, there's been so many like these pop Madonnas that have come out, and you could just tell that they're Disney Channel foes, right? Like they're just this person's being put out there by the studio because they're beautiful and all that stuff, and the real songwriters are in the back room, making these people. Taylor is all of it. She's all of the things. She's a pop idol, and she writes her own music, which is nuts.
You have to respect that. You got to respect.
Yeah,
that.
It is. And so I'm picking it too, and those songs get stuck in my head.
And here's the other thing. This is why she's smart. Panic at the Disco, Brendan Urie, who she partnered with, his song High Hopes. I don't know if you've heard that or not. It's been like, it was number one on the charts for forever. It was forever, and it had that same kind of happy, vibey, bouncy kind of sound to it. Mm-hmm. And so, what does she do to like recreate her image? She just partners with the hottest freaking, not the hottest like good looking, but the hottest as far as musical popularity. Yeah, one of him right now, and then she took over, dude. Yeah, there you go. I mean, like, we study music. Like, one of the things we do in our program is we study music and study how, like, did they go intro, verse, chorus, or just intro, chorus, or do a pop overture and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And so we look I took a lot about Taylor Swift. I got more gangster kids who could tell you so much about Taylor Swift. Like, it's kind of funny. Yeah. But it's just true, man. She's the king of songwriting. Also, by the way, the podcast is Switched on Pop, not Hooked on Pop.
All right. Awesome. Well, I think that was a very, very successful first pick or flick right there.
Bro. I got to go get some freaking baby powder.
Oh, man. It's great. It is so good. I found it. I found where.
Okay, humble brag. Shut up. We got to go then. Let's go.
I am so blessed to have someone like Sonny who you can get fired up by just saying a couple words. I consider myself
wait till what happens next week. Oakland Athletics. We return to a garden in the afterlife. We're going places. I know things about you too.
Okay.
I know things about you too. It's go time.
It's go time. All right, well, that brings our show to its final conclusion here. If you haven't already, go over to the Facebook page and let us know exactly. Just look it up. It's the Fringe Youth Worker Podcast. Let us know what are you picking or flicking these topics? Why?
You pick or flick TJ or me?
No, we're not doing that anymore. But anyway, yeah, just let us know. Join the conversation. We are going to try, if this computer comes in this week, we're going to try a live show next week, and we'll see how that works for you guys. So we'll be hopefully posting more about that soon. Sonny, you got anything else to share?
Nope.
Do you want me to give you another topic and you just get loose again? Or are you
good? I'm good.
Hey, what's the score in the Blazer game?
85-81, 9 minutes left.
Oh my gosh, it's coming down to it. All right. Thanks for being here, guys.